Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin. Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin.
So 34K Bitcoin, huh?
Yeah, man, it was a big pump. What was it, like 12, 13% one day?
What's going on, dude?
Hours, dude.
What's going on? Is the world dying? Is that what's going on?
I don't think the world is dying. I think it's a little bit of, I don't know. I think it's a big part of it was the ETF news, man. Everybody wants that ETF pump, and we saw that with it was like Cointelegraph. They tweeted out, maybe an intern got scolded and they took it down. They said they thought sources were, saying that the BlackRock ETF was going to get approved a week ago. We saw a little pump. And then, the ETF news yesterday came out with the ticker symbol and everything. And then that's when we saw the big pump. So I think it's just a big part of it's on the Bitcoin news, just people are, the traditional finance people, I guess, are the ones that really want the ETF to be passed. And yeah, I think that was just kind of the pump on that news.
But what does it say for us as Bitcoiners wanting this ETF to happen and then us directly benefiting from it? I mean, are we all fiat inside? I mean, what how do you feel about that? Do you feel torn at all? Or I know I feel torn.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely torn on it, but I mean, if you kind of, I don't know, if you think about it to an extent, microstrategy has almost been like a Bitcoin spot ETF at this point. It kind of tracks pretty similarly to the price of Bitcoin. And, obviously MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor have so much on Bitcoin on their balance sheet that, it essentially, it's just almost like a Bitcoin spot ETF. But I think it's more so about the traditional finance people just kind of seeing validity behind Bitcoin, right? Because I mean, obviously as plebs that are listening to this, we don't need traditional finance people or the traditional finance bros or whatever you want to call them, like Goldman Sachs, the banks, all that on Bitcoin, or even to accept it as, kind of some standard. But, Larry Fink and BlackRock, working pretty hard to get this ETF passed, puts a little bit more validity behind Bitcoin and everything that, plebs have been saying for years and years now, where it's okay, traditional finance person, maybe even, people who's listening, parents, all right, BlackRock's getting involved in this. Maybe there's something to it. I know, a couple years ago when I brought up Bitcoin to my parents and Elon was getting into it, they're like, well, we don't really understand Bitcoin, but Elon's smart, so he must know something about it. So, I mean, even to the average person who doesn't really know anything about Bitcoin, I think it just adds validity to it. And, the way plebs are just going to hodl through it, it's there's not much Bitcoin left in order to be scooped up off of exchanges or even left to be mined. And then there's all this institutional capital just kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting to get into something like Bitcoin. So, I think it's kind of twofold, right? I mean, it's obviously we're going to, one Bitcoin always equals one Bitcoin, but the biggest indicator to the outside Bitcoin space is the price. I mean, whether we want to admit it or not. And so, that's just a bunch of institutional capital that's waiting to come in. And, when it's Bitcoiners building Bitcoin companies, as I'm sure you know, like when the price pumps and you kind of get all that, it's easier to have that conversation. So I think I'm torn because I believe the true power of Bitcoin is obviously like the decentralized nature, being able to be your own bank, but at the same time, like somebody like BlackRock getting into this is going to make the price pump. I mean, it's just like no way around it. They're going to put a bunch of money into it. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm kind of torn on it, but hey, I mean, it's getting a lot more fun on Twitter to these days, to say the very least.
Yeah. So like I'm expecting like just straight up chaos. I'm like, because right now, I guess the pump that we're seeing, is that just related to people like trying to front run this, or do you think that's just like a small group of people that know ahead of time like what's happening behind the scenes, or what do you think that is?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, we have always seen like well, one, it's like probably like plebs or some traders trying to get in a little bit before, the ones that weren't like necessarily DCAing. But when it comes to some sort of stock or anything like that, yeah, there's people behind the scenes that always make money on it, right? I mean, like Nancy Pelosi made a big name for herself on Twitter because she was always front running all these stocks that she would purchase, and then all of a sudden some government deal would be passed with some company. So, I think it's probably a little bit of both. Whether or not we'll be able to know if people are front running or not is probably unlikely. But I think at the same time, like I was kind of saying, it kind of just adds validity. So the rumors have been floating around for a while, but now that there's like a ticker symbol and all this other kind of actual, I guess, stuff behind it, not just rumors. It seems like it's actually going to happen this time. That people are probably trying to front run it, because it's not live just yet as we're recording this, but it seems like it's getting set up to be here pretty soon.
Gosh, dude. Oh man. I don't know. And like when you look at like, because they've been working on this, when they submit the application, like back in August, or was it like when was the application actually sent? And this is the fastest I've ever seen it get approved, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I want to say that they've like applied for something similar to like this, or either it was them or maybe Grayscale or somebody else previously. I remember hearing about this kind of like a year ago or so, but it wasn't BlackRock necessarily. But now that BlackRock is in, it's kind of been, they're obviously one of the bigger players. So yeah, I mean, I think it was either August or September time when they first submitted this, and it's one of the many submittals that have kind of gone into the SEC for this spot ETF. So I wouldn't be surprised if after one gets approved, a couple more kind of play. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Oh man.
Ball effect.
Oh man, this is not good. Yeah, just like talking to hear about at the lab, I'm just like, everybody, we don't pay attention to the price, or whatever, but it definitely is a distractor. Like, one of the comments I heard was like, can we just get back to building quietly? And like now it's like that quietness is kind of going away if this price starts running up,
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. It'll definitely have more eyeballs on it. Some of the things that are building that maybe not ready to, I guess, grow on a mass scale. Like people are kind of waiting for this pump, I think. And it's not only, just Bitcoiners. I think, I've even been seeing like people who are, I guess, not just like full-fledged, orange pilled and just strictly Bitcoin maxis, but like I think even like the crypto people are kind of waiting for this too. And, that obviously causes the hysteria in itself, right? It's just like we've been in this bear market for a couple years now, and it seems like everybody's just been kind of like lulling along. I know we've had a few conversations offline, just like kind of, man, it's, sometimes it's hard in the bear market to continue to build and grind away. And I think this was the first sign of potentially going back to a bull market. I don't know if this was just kind of like a little pump, and then maybe we'll even see a BART where it'll go back down or grow sideways for a little bit. I don't even really know. But, I think everybody's just I mean, I think what we can tell in the past like 12 hours is that everybody's just ready for another Bitcoin bull market outside of just like the people who have been building and kind of grinding away, where everybody that's grinding away is like, all right, well, I was kind of, maybe I'm not ready for the next bull market and what all comes with it,
Yeah, it's a crazy time for it to be happening here in October. I was expecting the opposite. Like I was expecting like for the price to crash even further in December. And like I was expecting like really dark days ahead. That's what I was preparing for. But I'm kind of shocked, to be honest. Like I was not expecting to wake up today and see like 34K Bitcoin. Like that was not on my on my agenda. It's a nice surprise, but I was literally anticipating, okay, we're at 27, 28. And then we'll be down to like, I don't know, 21, 20, 18 by the end of the year. And a lot of that. And that'll keep going up until like February. I was thinking like, okay, and then we'll get back to like the 20s again. That was my mindset, like going in, and it always does the complete opposite of what you're anticipating. That's what's crazy about Bitcoin, man.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I hear you, dude. I didn't really see this coming as well. But yeah, like I said, I'm not completely sold that we're back on a bull market just yet. Like, I don't know. I think like, as we've kind of seen, like Bitcoin goes through these little pumps, and this is like strictly a pump off of just Bitcoin news from what I can tell. And I'm sure we'll get into like the macro situation here in a little bit. But, obviously the ETF news comes like last week from Cointelegraph, we see a little pump, and then, it comes on Monday and we see this pump again. So, I think, yeah, it is interesting because we're seeing kind of like a downturn in everything else, or at least like some stagnation in everything else. So maybe this is the sign that Bitcoin's going to start to decouple, but it is kind of interesting, like two parts of this are kind of interesting, is like the overall macro environment is like a little hairy, to say the very least. And then, and with the potential of the recession, and then it's a pump like strictly off of Bitcoin news. It's not really off of, anything like related to like tech stocks or, something like macroeconomic wise. It's just strictly the Bitcoin news, which is pretty cool to see, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? Like, because hypothetically, and we can move away from this. I just want to focus on this just because like you're the guy who I always ask about this stuff. Hypothetically though, let's just say the ETF does get passed this year. Does that mean we're right back at like peak 2022, like 2021? Like what does it look like as far as price? Do we go right back to where we were for the last bull run, or what do you think? Or does that, or it's already priced in now at this point. So we just stay here at 34, 33, and then that's the ETF.
I don't think like the ETF is necessarily priced in just yet. And then, too, kind of how like a lot of these big institutions have to buy in. They have to buy in like slow and steady. They can't just kind of like whale in and buy a bunch right away. That is kind of regulated. So like, whenever you hear like MicroStrategy, for example, because I've already brought them up, when they come in and buy Bitcoin, they have to buy it over, depending on how much they buy, but in a couple weeks or a month or however long it is. And they're not allowed to really just go in and just whale in to accelerate the price up right away. So we'll probably see like, some of these jumps on the news just from like maybe some other people trying to front run the news, but we'll see kind of like a slow and steady run up, and then that'll run into the halving, which, that can kind of cause some havoc as well too. So, I don't think the ETF is priced in. I think like we'll probably see the next all-time high, probably I wouldn't guess until like 2025. Generally speaking, if you kind of look at the chart of after the halving, each one, you see the kind of the slow run up in the 4-year cycles, which kind of coincides with the business cycle. But every single time we've seen the peak after the all-time high, or the peak after the halving, get kind of farther away from the halving as far as like time period goes. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see it maybe early 2025, like Q1. I know there's always the theory of like the super cycle and whatnot. I don't really foresee that anytime soon, but because I still think like, as the world is, we're still kind of in that fiat world where we have these 4-year-ish business cycles which take place, and that kind of rolls into the 4-year cycles of Bitcoin too. So until we kind of, I guess, fully diverge away from that, I still think we'll see a lot of those 4-year cycles. Maybe they won't be as dramatic, and the volatility will go down. But now that all this institutional money is going to go in, like we're still, as much as Bitcoiners love to say it, I mean, I'm going to pull it out here. The cliche is like, we're still so early. Like if you look at the market cap of Bitcoin compared to, a lot of these other assets, it's just so, so much smaller than everything, like than gold, real estate, all this other stuff. It's just like a fraction of it. So, I'm sure a lot of other people will go out there and make some crazy price predictions. I'm usually not one to make those predictions. Yeah. So I just kind of like look at, where it is. And, the other interesting aspect of it is like from the last bull run, we saw FTX and a lot of these like bad players handing out paper Bitcoin. So, right. If we've got that situation under wraps, maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I don't think that there's going to be as many big players around that can issue that paper Bitcoin like FTX was able to do. So I think like this next bull run, it's set up to be a lot better than the last one, just because like institutional money, more people coming in, less bad actors. And like because of the higher interest rates, it's just like going to be harder for a company like FTX to come in and be at a crazy evaluation and raise all these marketing dollars and do like all the crazy things that FTX was doing. And yeah, I think that, that's setting up for a nice little recipe or cocktail for a big giant green candle there.
Dang, nice plug. Dude, you get the green candle hat on. It looks clean, man.
I know, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
How's that? Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, I bought 10 and then I wore one on the boat this weekend, and one of them fell off and is now in the ocean, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of handing them out. So maybe next time I'm in Austin, I'll give you one if you want one.
Hell yeah. Dude, yeah, it's good to have you back on. Obviously, I didn't have you on just to talk about Bitcoin, but it was definitely on the top of my mind, But what's going on with the macro stuff? I haven't really been paying attention to it right now. I'm kind of dealing with a lot of moving and stuff right now. With like we're moving offices and stuff here in Austin, so I'm dealing with a lot of like just, dude, for lack of I don't want to curse, but like just red tape, dude. Just like all sorts of fiat things. And I wish I could go and complain, but I can't do that. But to say the least, it's really frustrating. So what the heck is going on out there in these markets? Dude, what are we experiencing right now? Because it feels like a recession happening right now, but
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on who you ask on whether or not the recession's actually happening. But basically, long story short, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, at a skyrocketing rate. They've been, I wouldn't say like they've paused raising, but they've been the past couple meetings not raising or raising 25 basis points. Jerome Powell has come out and said essentially that he's not going to pivot until 2025, whether or not that's true. I mean, I'm one to believe that he is, just because, everything that he's said so far to this point, he's kind of stuck to his guns. He said higher for longer, that kind of thing. And, the consumer, whether you believe it or not, has kind of held strong, meaning that the consumer is still out there spending, although there is a lot of cracks underneath the surface. If you look at, credit card debt, housing affordability, and then student loan repayments are about to start opening up, there's a lot of issues where spending is probably going to slow down here soon, but employment is still high. to the point where, I don't really trust the jobs data, if you ask me, but those that kind of use that aspect of things. Well, I guess I'll go into a little bit of why I don't trust that data. Like the JOLTS report is like a perfect example. It's a survey-based jobs report. And, previously it was like your American duty to go and, fill out these surveys. So, the census and everything like that could have proper data. And that would have anywhere from like 60 to maybe even 80 at the peak response rate. Well, we're getting below 30% response rate now because, one, people just don't check their mailbox anymore. And two, like it's just an old and outdated system. Like you don't really send mail anymore. And so, this data is all backwards looking and showing that, all the companies are somewhat tightening, maybe laying off the fat or trimming the fat, so to speak. We saw a lot of tech companies do that earlier this year, or maybe even it was like about a year ago at this point. But, I think all the companies that have made it this far are either still kind of doing maybe a layoff of a few percentage points of, employees, or kind of holding steady and pausing hiring. But there is a lot of job openings there. I think the people that are getting kind of hurt with these job openings are maybe not entry level or like C-suite, but kind of that in between where they're not necessarily management, but they're, a few years experience above, those entry level positions. Because, usually you can get entry level positions to kind of try to figure it out, work hard and pay them less money. And then they're not qualified to be like on the managerial level. So, the consumer is still holding strong. Housing is still kind of steady because of that. Although, mortgage rates are at 8%, which is the highest, I think, in like 25 years they've ever been. So, housing in big cities, I'm sure you've seen it in Austin, it boomed like crazy. In cities like Austin, Nashville, where a lot of people kind of flock to, housing's kind of going down. But in other cities that saw maybe like secondary growth, like Tampa is a good example, housing's staying kind of steady. And I think that housing is probably going to stay steady in a lot of these bigger, cities that people have kind of flocked to. And now everybody's being kind of stagnant, right? I mean, we're seeing like more of a revert back to that hybrid workforce opposed to just like the stay and work at home, the remote work, at least in traditional jobs, probably not in Bitcoin jobs. But the Fed is going to continue to raise rates. The market is calling for a pivot. Whether that's going to occur when the market calls for it or not is unlikely, in my opinion, because the market called for a pivot basically all this year and it didn't happen. And then now the market was calling for a pivot in September of 2024. And now it's moved that up to March, springtime or so of next year. It seems like it's just the market's trying to front run the Fed. And I just don't think that the Fed and Jerome Powell really cares about that. I've had a couple really interesting guests on my podcast. One of them has been Tom Luongo, and his theory is basically the Fed is trying to destroy a lot of these other fiat currencies by making the dollar extremely strong, by raising interest rates, making the offshore dollar market for a lot of these European countries and outside countries who are kind of, their currencies in a sense depend on the dollar, make those currencies weak and kind of fiddle them out that way. We've kind of seen that occur where a lot of other fiat currencies are really hurting. But on the flip side of things, that has made, some of the other countries like the BRICS countries upset in a sense where obviously, we see the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We've seen Russia kind of pull their lever of energy and, oil, gas, petroleum, that kind of stuff, and kind of pull that away from countries who are kind of, siding with the U.S. in a sense. So we're kind of in an interesting aspect of things where the U.S.'s lever to pull has been the monetary policy, where everybody else, their lever to pull has been kind of on the energy side of things. I think macro-wise, where we have a lot of cracks in the consumer in the U.S., some potential geopolitical tensions. But the consumer is still holding strong. And we've, if you would have asked me about a year ago if we would probably be in a recession by this time, I probably would have told you yes. But it seems like, not everything is crashing and burning just yet. And maybe that recession is going to keep getting pushed out for a while. And we're kind of in this, I guess, stagflationary period where, up until Tuesday or Monday, the Bitcoin price just kind of was floating sideways. That's where I kind of see the overall macro economy is we're just kind of floating sideways right now.
Yeah, dude, it's yeah, because the last time we talked was in March, and I think at that time you were saying, "Oh, we're definitely headed into recession, depression." It was very doomer at that time, just because of everything that was happening in March. But I think now, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like two realities. Like, because I'll have a conversation with, like, let's just be my situation here, right, in Austin. So, like, been looking at all these new offices and stuff like that. So on one hand, you check in with them a month ago and it's a different price, and then now it's a totally different price than that price. And even on the, like, our current office space, right? It's just like some private equity firm that owns it somewhere else, right? And what you're seeing is just they're not willing to budge, but they're not willing to budge because maybe they have other assets elsewhere that they can leverage of a sort. But there's no one actually moving in. Like, that's another thing that's going on there. Like, this office space is not being moved into either, but things are going down. But in other areas, they're going up. And then you have all this renovation that's going on around us, right? But then also you have homelessness that's on the rise, and crime and all that stuff. So it's just like all these different realities. It's almost like no one is on the same page of where we should be. It's almost like we're living in like 5-6 different worlds here. And everybody's, does that make sense at all? It almost feels like there's just, because I feel like before, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, everybody, everything was going up. Everybody was on kind of the same page of where it was headed. Even on the homeless side, like when you look at the homeless side, that was kind of teetering off. And then you look just like on the small business, medium-sized businesses, that was growing steady. And nowadays it almost seems like there's just different realities happening all at once. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. And, kind of back to your point on like commercial real estate, that's where I think like the biggest issues are, because, you highlighted a perfect point there, right? I mean, we saw a lot of commercial buildings in, San Francisco, LA, Chicago, like a lot of these big cities go to, or like businesses move away from there, move to places like Austin or like, Florida and whatever. And now these big giant commercial buildings are empty. Whereas, or like have like 25% occupancy. So a lot of these buildings are going under, banks are reevaluating them at like 25 or 50% of their overall valuation. And these loans, how they loan against them essentially as like, a 5 to 10 year fixed rate. And then it gets changed. So obviously rates have increased and the occupancy has gone down. So, and that's how a lot of these buildings are valued at. And so, I
was going to say, it almost makes me wonder if each one of these places and these equity firms, private equity firms, or even the people that own these buildings are taking risk, right? Like they're taking on risk. And it makes me wonder, like, okay, like, so which ones aren't taking risk and which ones are taking risk? And I think there's that kind of sentiment that's out there. Maybe some of these people are over leveraged and they can't talk about it or they can't say, but then maybe there's other people who aren't, and they're able to take on risk and offset that. It's just fascinating, dude, how there's just so many different books out there being played right now.
No, 100%. So I think, the big private equity guys that probably have like a huge portfolio, this is like a fraction of it, right? Maybe they have some commercial buildings or apartment buildings, which are probably doing just fine. But like the office buildings aren't doing as well. So maybe they can afford to leave this vacant for, a couple, months at a time, or maybe even half a year and not really hurt. But like the mom and pop, smaller equity guys that are trying to buy these commercial buildings, those are the ones that are going to get killed and just absolutely destroyed when it comes to this stuff. And, I've been kind of, teetering back and forth with the idea that commercial real estate might be kind of the cog to fall when it comes to, a potential recession. But the other aspect of it to me is that, it might just be like such a small percentage of the population that it won't really affect it too much. And it's kind of sad because like you said, and I'm sure you see all the time in downtown Austin, is like a lot of these buildings that get abandoned, and it kind of causes like maybe a homeless issue and all these other things. And it just kind of makes the downtown's areas not as like nice to be around, where there's not like small businesses or like local shops that, Austin is known for downtown, where it's a lot of these like empty buildings. And I think, in a lot of these bigger metropolis areas, that's what we'll start to see, because like either the rent has gotten like absolutely crazy, and it's, more of a hybrid work environment. So to go into the office 2 or 3 days a week, it's not justified to pay that amount for the business. Or two, businesses are just staying like fully remote, and they're just not going to have the expensive downtown office. Maybe they'll move out to the suburbs or something where, they'll get families who would rather live out there opposed to, people who are coming to work downtown. So, I think that'll be kind of an interesting thing to keep an eye on, is like for sure is the commercial real estate aspect of things and how that affects everything going forward, because I think we've already started to see cracks in that. And, obviously the small regional banks that lend to those investors who buy those commercial buildings, they've already been kind of hurting. And so, so the preparedness of like not being able to, in a sense, get the return on the loan from the commercial buildings might not be there for some of these smaller banks too.
Gosh. It's it's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2024. Because in one aspect of it, you'll have this reality where us as Bitcoiners see the price, whatever it does, I would imagine it's going to go up. And then you have the, real estate and commercial property. I would imagine it's going to go down or be available. It's going to be really fascinating, dude. 2024 is going to be really fascinating to see. I think everybody knew just right off 2023. And that's kind of what I've done personally. Just like, hey, let's just survive through 2023. But 2024, I don't know. Is there a reason to be bullish in 2024 or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think like, commercial real estate is maybe the only like big bearish thing that I'm seeing right now, because, if you look at the overall stock market, I think we're like still up, like all the major indexes are up about 10% year to date, which is about an average year, right? I mean, we were up like maybe 20% from the year to date at like an all-time high. Or I guess like at the year highs or whatever it was. But, we're still up 10%. Stocks are still kind of, equities are still kind of just chugging along. There has been kind of the narrative that, the 7 players are kind of holding the S&P 500 up or propping it up, which is true in a sense. But I mean, like, somebody made this comparison to me today, and I kind of liked it, so I'm gonna repeat it. But he basically said, like, look, if I was drafting an NBA team and I needed 5 guys, I would pick the 5 proven all-stars, right? I would pick LeBron, Giannis, Luka Doncic, Jokic, like an all-star team, right? Like you wouldn't go and pick like some unproven rookie. And like kind of revolve your entire thesis around that, right? I mean, maybe you get lucky. Maybe you draft a LeBron and he's like that at his young age, but how many draft picks kind of go out and flame out? So that's kind of what we're seeing in the stock market is like the big players are still, holding steady and just absolutely crushing it. And it's been definitely like a stock pickers sort of market, but at the same time, like, the overall market health is about on average. And so, there's that. And like residential real estate is still kind of holding true just because there's like such low inventory. Usually we see, I guess like there's about 1 million houses for sale on the market right now. Usually we see about 2 to 3 million, somewhere in that range. So even though that the rates are so high, there's still transactions going around, and like the overall price of homes are still, staying at like relatively stagnant levels, or maybe even increasing in some markets, depending on where you look. So, real estate isn't exactly crashing. The stock market isn't crashing. The only like kind of negative thing that I see really is just kind of commercial real estate. And then obviously, we're seeing Bitcoin, pump a little bit here too. And then we have, obviously the halving coming up, and a lot of other potentially positive things for Bitcoin in the near future, it seems like. So, I know we just kind of went through the doom and gloom of commercial real estate, but everything else, it's like we're not exactly like pumping like we were, after the COVID stimulus came in, but we're not exactly all doom and gloom here. I think like we're kind of, holding steady, and as long as the consumer can stay strong, which, we don't really have any reason to believe it won't, other than, Powell kind of just hinting at that unemployment should increase. That we should be able to be pretty good spot going into the halving and going into 2024.
Yeah, I would imagine the job market is just like decimated right now. I haven't looked, or I don't know, but I would imagine that's not doing too well. Everything, and then kind of goes back to this kind of theory I have. Like maybe there's just people that have money to buy these things right now, and that's kind of what we're seeing. And they're kind of, there's just mirage of we think everything's fine, but it's literally just like these buyers. I don't want to call it last resort, but these buyers of fiat resort, or I don't know what you know what I'm trying to say. It's just like, is that what's going on out there? Maybe there's just more, maybe there's just few buyers that are buying a lot of this stuff. That it's just I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anecdotally, I am looking for a new job right now. So, I mean, from that perspective, like I've had a couple interviews, but I also know that there's a lot of jobs out there that, post their jobs, and then I'll get an email back that says like, they're not hiring right now for this position. They kind of paused hiring. So I think like the job market is kind of iffy. I think that, there's like I kind of said, for people in like my position specifically, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. It's either like I'm going to have to find somebody that's going to believe in me and get a position that I'm maybe not as 100% qualified for, or I'm going to probably have to take a pay cut. Which, I mean, I'm hoping I don't have to. So hopefully I'm not jinxing it or saying anything like that. But, at the same time, it's like, it is kind of where it's either something where it's like 5 to 10 years experience, or like kind of entry level. So there's jobs out there. It's just maybe like people like me who are kind of in between don't necessarily qualify for one, or don't want to take the pay cut and go to the entry level positions. But I mean, I've also been on the hunt not too long. So, I'm just kind of overreacting a little bit, just from what I've seen. But I also know some people that, got laid off 3 or 4 months ago and are just now getting into a new position.
Okay. So there's jobs. Sounds like there's jobs out there. Maybe the competition is a little bit more fierce than probably would have been 3 or 4 months ago. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
And I mean, I definitely know that like jobs are, I kind of had like a couple Twitter spaces on this, which was like, kind of interesting, where some hiring managers came in and they said, essentially now the environment they get, they don't have to prove anything on like a resume or check. So they just kind of like look at it. They have the recruiter vet for like 5-10 minutes. And then, it's more of like 3 or 4 interviews. And then they do usually some sort of exam if it's some type of, coding position or engineering position. Or maybe they do some sort of like personality test. Like it's a little bit more in depth of the interview process now than maybe it was like 3-4 years ago, where like everything was in person, because like, you can't really like, you can kind of hide behind the screen, I guess, so to speak, and like say you have these skills when maybe you don't necessarily. So I think that environment is changing, where it's like the hiring process is well more dragged out than maybe it was before. But I think other than that, there is some jobs still out there.
Gosh, man. So many realities going on at once. It's crazy.
Yeah.
On the Bitcoin side, it's a good day. The price is pumping. Yeah. It's a good day. Gosh, dude. Oh man. I don't know. I try to keep my head down and just keep working and, take it one day at a time, that kind of approach. And, every once in a while you got to pop your head back up to see what's going on. And today was one of those days, but it sounds like maybe we're going to have a better 2024. Maybe this is ending. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like, is Powell really our pal? Or
I mean, like, look, I like in the Bitcoin space and, a lot of the financial spaces, they really gave Powell a hard time. But, I think like he's pulling the only lever that he really can, which is the interest rates. And he's trying to combat inflation. Now, will we ever get back down to that 2% inflation mark that the Fed just magically came up upon? I personally doubt it. We'll probably get to the 3-4% mark, and then they'll have to pull back. Because I just think the amount of debt that the US has gotten into, the amount of the M2 money supply that Bitcoiners love to look at that chart and just see that exponential growth that we went through a couple years ago. I just don't really foresee us getting back to that point. And I also don't foresee us getting back to that zero interest rate environment that we had from 2010 to 2020, basically. So I think that, there will be a recession. How hard it will be, before I was saying it was, I'm sure people could go back and listen to that episode, and I'm sure I was just yep, we're screwed, basically.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was something like that.
Yeah. I don't know if we're necessarily as screwed as, I previously thought. But I've kind of been surprised by the resilience of the consumer and the resilience of, people trying to spend money. And, that's kind of, at the end of the day, that's what makes the world go around right now, right? I mean, that's, we're in this debt-based system that, encourages people to spend before their money is devalued, right? So as long as that keeps trucking along, I think we'll be okay. Maybe we'll see a slight recession in 25, but I think in 24, I have no reason to really believe that we'll really see anything start to surface really poorly or get really poor and stuff get really poor until maybe towards the end of next year. And that'll be a very interesting time, because that's when I think, the Bitcoin price will start to really pump up too. So, we'll probably see a lot of people start to flock into an asset like Bitcoin. We'll see institutions come into an asset like Bitcoin, and all these ETF vehicles are going to start, flooding in the market. So,
so this is where I think you hit it on right there. Cause at least from my side, on the business side, I find myself only paying for things that absolutely will make me more money or bring some type of value to us. Right. And that goes on the hiring and the hiring side as well too. Right. So I'd imagine, just from a consumer standpoint, you're probably seeing a lot of that. And that's probably why they say some of these companies will get washed out or they'll just disappear. It's just because no one was buying anything they were selling, or they just weren't a value. What are those people always say? Oh, these companies are not really valuable. They're kind of zombie companies because they don't really make any money. And we're seeing that with Reddit and all these type of things. And total great example of a classic rug pull. But I think we are going to see that. I think we're going to see a lot more of these kind of companies who just don't provide any value whatsoever, or these SaaS products that don't provide any value whatsoever. Turns out Canva can do everything. We don't need Canva and Figma, those type of things. Or maybe you do. Maybe you just need Figma, don't need Canva, or just these type of SaaS products that are out there. Don't need Dropbox and Google, these type of things. And I think we're just going to see just cuts. And I know I'm doing that personally on my side, where we're cutting a lot of these SaaS products that we don't actually use or actually even need. Turns out Airtable, we don't need it. Why are we paying $20, $30 a month for Airtable? We could just do it inside of Google or whatever, Dropbox or whatever it is. Right. And I think we're going to kind of get that, we're going to separate those products and those companies. And that's happening already if it hasn't happened. That's why you're seeing a lot of these AI competing products, right? They're all implementing AI just to kind of stay, in that kind of thing. And then you see the products that aren't implementing, and you're like, why haven't you implemented, this basic function, which is just an API call. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot of these decisions being made, and people are kind of getting their books ready for for 2024. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think, a lot of these businesses, the way that they're approaching it is exactly like you lined out, right? I mean, they're making sure that they're, making the smart business decisions for the long term, right? I mean, they're making sure that these people are making money, like, that they're making sure they're being conservative about growth, whether it's like raising money, right? I mean, raising money right now, I'm sure, as you know better than anybody, it's not exactly an easy task to chew off right now. And so a lot of these zombie companies that were essentially never made any money and were just living off of these venture capital or debt, and robbing Peter to pay Paul, like those guys are going to die off. And I don't think we're going to really see an environment where those companies are able to prosper anymore. And so, we'll see a lot of these companies maybe like filter out. Maybe we'll see some of them buy, maybe the prospering ones buy out the smaller guys that are maybe the zombie guys, if they like the product or service or whatever, and be able to turn a profit on it. I don't really know, but I think that, it's going to be more difficult for small businesses to kind of get off the ground and get started. And, but two, like if they're able to get off the ground and get started, it'll make the companies more resilient in the end, because, you're having to really be cognizant of every dollar you spend, right? I mean, because like those dollars are just harder to come by. And, whether it's like employees or some service or product or whatever to help prop up your business, I think, a lot more of those tough decisions are going to be made in this next 6 to 9 months, maybe even year. And 24 is something where people are going to be really cognizant of their balance sheets, just because of, like a lot of the cracks that I mentioned a little bit earlier could potentially begin to surface. So, yeah, I mean, I think over time, it'll just make the businesses a little bit stronger and better. But, in the short term, it's going to take some adjustment, because a lot of, maybe young entrepreneurs, they never had to go through an environment like this. Whereas like, some of the seasoned vets, they've kind of had to go through some business cycles like this, or maybe even like the '08 recession and other things like that. But yeah, I think it's interesting because like a lot of, Bitcoiners haven't had to experience something like this before, and Bitcoin alone hasn't had to experience anything like this. So
yeah, I think just seeing it on my side, and I can only speak to, what we do here and that what I'm seeing, but not talking about anybody specifically, but from what I can tell, just like on the fiat, startup VC area, you can see them already, they're allocating the dollars ready to fund whichever, top tier, what do you want to call them? I don't want to call them blue chip or whatever, fiat chip company, to make sure they stick around. Right. And these type of companies they don't know how to make revenue, because they've never actually had to make revenue. A lot of them, will burn, whether it's $1 million or 800,000 per month just on their burn. It's just like, what are you doing? Like they're worse than the Fed. I think on just like on the, as far as like Bitcoin businesses, you typically see like a lot of them right now that have stuck around are learning the hard way. Like, right. Like they're like learning how to value, their customers, their clients, their users. And they're taking all that into consideration when you're making revenue, because at this point, if you can survive something like this, you're pretty good. Like I would imagine, like you're going to be going into 2024, like really focused and knowing what you actually have to accomplish. And to be honest, Brandon, like a lot of people don't want it hard, right? Like it's, there's a saying in the Bitcoin startup space where like, we build in Bitcoin because it's hard. It's like building in hard mode. Like that's what it feels like when you build on Bitcoin. But like right now in this kind of like bear market that we're in, it's extremely hard mode to survive. And that's just to survive. And just kind of what I'm seeing, you're seeing a lot of people just, either rage quit or they just give up and they just can't hack it because it's like really hard. And I don't blame them. Like it's really effing hard. But the ones who can kind of go through this and experience it and build up this kind of muscle memory from it, they're going to be very, they're going to look very good at coming 2024,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'll give it to the entrepreneurs, man, because it's not easy, right? And I mean, especially on Bitcoin, riding the volatility, riding the waves, being in at the forefront of a technology where a lot of, general venture capital does not understand and still doesn't really understand, especially in, a downturn like this, where we see, a lot of venture capitalists saw the collapse of, the FTXs, the Celsiuses, like a lot of these bad actors, and now just don't want to even dip their toes in anything related to Bitcoin because they, conflate it with crypto, unfortunately. So, I mean, I think that's, it's going to be difficult, right? I mean, or it has been difficult. And being an entrepreneur just in general just isn't really easy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the volatility of Bitcoin and the volatility of being an entrepreneur just kind of like accelerates it in both directions, right? I mean, the highs, I'm sure, are super high when Bitcoin's pumping, but when Bitcoin's low, maybe you can justify it on the downturn. But I think this bear market has just been tough, man. I mean, we've seen it crab walk sideways for quite some time, and that's why I think we saw one day of like 12% increase, and we're sitting here talking about it like it's it's like absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Like for me, I was just like, wait, what? I wasn't ready. I thought we had a lot more pain. I'm getting used to the pain, kind of let's keep going with the pain. But I mean, it was kind of shocking. Like I said in the beginning, it's kind of shocking because I was expecting more pain.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like I was expecting more pain too. And, but I wouldn't be surprised too, if like, we see this 12% jump and then the ETF gets delayed or something like that. And then we don't see another jump until that, I mean, it could be something like that too, or we just kind of, we saw the quick jump and everybody was like, all right, we're back at it again. And then,
it gets delayed. Oh man, dude. I think you just called it right there. I think that's probably exactly what's going to happen. It gets delayed and we go back down to the 20s. Who knows, dude? But yeah, I could totally see that happening. And that would fit perfect with 2023, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Like you get a little bit of high and then you get back down to like, all right, that was fun for like 24 hours. Now we got to get back to it. Right?
Yeah. Cause like right now I've already kind of just have it just planted. Like 2023 is going to suck. Just get through it. It is what it is. We get into 2024. Let's see what it looks like then. But I imagine 2024 is going to at least slightly be better than 2023. But I think for me personally, I'm just like counting out 2023 as, it's like, let's just get through it.
But it's another year, right, of Bitcoin adoption that's going to be, implemented, right? I mean, I think like more countries are going to start adopting Bitcoin. I mean, we didn't even talk about like Argentina, like Javier Milei. I unfortunately didn't win, but
what happened with that? What happened with that?
I don't really know. There's a lot of people that I kind of say to like maybe it's election fraud or something like that. They kept him out. Like I didn't really follow it that closely. From what I understand, he was, kind of ahead, and he was on Tucker Carlson. Like Javier Milei was like making the waves, and the people in the United States and everybody were kind of hearing about him. But I saw a video Simply Bitcoin put out. They were asking, people from Argentina and Miami, like, what did you think of Javier Milei, just like the average person? And they were all kind of scared and tentative about him because of, he's coming in with like a lot different or radical ideas compared to what they were used to. But obviously, what they were used to was not exactly the greatest economic situation with how volatile their own currency is. So I think people were just kind of worried about the change, and I wouldn't just kind of based off stuff I've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like, well, maybe the Bitcoiners were just kind of all backing him, but everybody else that was of Argentina descent didn't really know much about Bitcoin and is kind of I guess tentative on the fact of some crazy guy coming in and being like, hey, let's switch to this funny internet money kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Bitcoiners are just louder. And we're like that bright orange too. So it's really hard to like not see us, I would imagine. It was surprising to me though. Like I think just kind of talking through this, that you see even El Salvador, when they announced the whole Bitcoin thing, that was shocking. I didn't see that happening so soon. And then even this ETF thing, to go back to that, like I would have thought this not going to happen until like, years later. So this is kind of shocking that we're actually even discussing this right now. And I think seeing Argentina jump on as well too would be shocking for me as well too. Again, it's just moving a lot faster than I would have anticipated as far as adoption and getting it out there to the masses for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, BlackRock kind of, I mean, they're, investment managers, right? So they're supposed to try to find alpha in the market. I think, based on what we've lined out here, and like, the hodlers like holding Bitcoin and not like, wallets with over one coin not moving in like the past year. So I think it's like 60% or maybe even higher of wallets with over one full Bitcoin haven't moved a single sat out of that wallet in the past year. It's like just like the kind of like hodler mentality, all the other things that we've lined out. I think like BlackRock is just kind of opening up their eyes to that and have been seeing it, right? I mean, Fidelity, I met somebody at Pacific Bitcoin who worked for Fidelity. And so like a lot of these other bigger banks, and like traditional finance industry or traditional finance institutions have already at least been keeping an eye on Bitcoin for quite some time. And then this is like, I guess the final leg of it is like, all right, well, now we got to get all these other people to give us money so we can buy Bitcoin. And then, unfortunately, people won't be able to experience their own, I guess, self-sovereignty by owning their own Bitcoin because they would have it in an ETF. But it would also like open the eyes to a lot more people as to like the validity behind Bitcoin. So, there's that. And then, obviously when we get in another bull run, I'm sure we'll have other countries start to turn their heads. And especially when, El Salvador, maybe they're buying, I don't know what their average buy was. Maybe it was around 35,000. But once they pass that and, all the headlines are, well, El Salvador is making this much on their Bitcoin investment, and on their Bitcoin bonds, whenever those actually launch and all that other kind of stuff, I'm sure other countries will start to take notice. And I think, personally, I think a lot of them have already started to notice. And, maybe some of these countries too that are pretty energy dense have started mining as well already. So, yeah, I mean, I think like 24 is going to be an interesting time for adoption, not only in like companies, but like, widespread political adoption as well.
Yeah. Just on the builder side, you're just seeing more and more people come in to start building on Bitcoin. Just seeing that more and more. New people just coming out of wherever. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's finally we're getting the signal out there, just like in Austin as a community. But we're just seeing more and more new people showing up to the meetup, showing up to the commons, to Pleb Lab, to workshops and stuff. And these are new people that we haven't seen before. So I would imagine a lot of that's, it's bullish. It's bullish for Bitcoin as well too, just because stuff's getting built. Yeah.
No, I mean, I definitely think that like the building is going to continue. I think more people are going to start to get interested in it. And I think like, I've just kind of seen more college kids get into it, right? I mean, I spoke at the University of Tampa Crypto Club here. I mean,
how was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool. I was surprised. There was like maybe 20, 25 kids at this thing. And, it's not exactly a big school. So, a lot of people are becoming interested in, I guess like maybe it's like crypto at first, but then they find the way to Bitcoin, which I mean, maybe that's a little bit better. But I mean, a lot of the ways that these kids were talking in college was a lot more, I guess, like educated on economics and things like that and just how the world works than I was at that time. So it makes me optimistic for the future that not only like, people are going to start coming around where it comes to like inflation, they see their grocery bill is like $200 now when it was like $150 like a year and a half ago or even less. Now we're seeing kids kind of like wake up to the fact like, hey, this Bitcoin thing is not going away. And it's been around like
since they were like 5 years old or whatever, however, 7 years old or 8 years old. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's like something that's like, all right, well, it's something that's here to stay. And like, I know some teachers that are starting to teach, some younger kids in like private school about Bitcoin, just kind of like tossing the theory out there. So, I mean, like, I think, people are just starting to orange pill more. And I think more people are starting to get those touch points in order to start paying attention. Because I think it takes it's like 6 to 8 touch points before like it really sticks. So
yeah, I think it's also like their millennial older brothers not shutting up about or their millennial dads or whatever, just not shutting up about Bitcoin. I feel like the millennial generation knows it better than most about just getting the shaft on everything. So
100%. Yeah, I mean, our generation's just sick of it at this point, so we're just looking for it out, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they're finally listening. That's cool, man. That's cool that you did that in Tampa.
Yeah. They two of the girls that run that club, they're actually like interns for Bitcoin Bay. So shout out to Bitcoin Bay.
Oh wow, Wesley.
Yeah.
How are those guys doing? I just see you guys throwing parties all the time. Is that pretty much the thing? You guys just throw parties?
No, we're not throwing parties. We have like social events. So they kind of do a unique structure. They have a bit devs once a month.
Okay.
They have socials, I think like twice a month. And then like one is more of like a workshop. And then they also do like community service stuff. So I know that there's like a Halloween themed community service event this Saturday.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
do you help them out, Brandon, with anything, or are you just always over there?
I attend. I've helped live stream some things. We've had some. I'm trying to do like the media coverage around some stuff. I try to give them as much exposure as I can. A couple of them have come on podcasts a couple of times too. That's cool. So. They actually just went to an event at Gary Cardone's house.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, they built a lightning powered tap where you could. I think it made like an old fashioned.
That was Ben, right? Benny. Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. I was like, man, are they just doing soirees now? Are they still back on the grassroots mission, or what's going on? But yeah. It's cool.
Yeah, that was I guess it was like a business event for Gary at Gary Cardone's house. Green Candle didn't get an invite, unfortunately.
Dude, aren't you the one that introed him to Cardone? Like, what's going on with that?
I think that they knew him before or something, and like we both kind of met him
at the same time.
I don't know. Yeah,
but you've been to his house though. You've been to his house. You've sat down with the man.
Yeah, I interviewed him and I didn't get anything. He just hits me up every now and then to try to go into his Twitter spaces, but that's about it. I don't get the invite to the cool party.
What's going on, Cardone? What's going on?
I know, man. I know. I got to hit him up and give him some talk about it.
Nah, that's cool. I love what you guys are doing out there in Tampa. I'm just kidding. I love the work that all of them are doing as far as like the wallet, and dude, that's what we're talking about, man. Just getting Tampa on the map. You guys are making a move for being the place to go in Florida, man. Miami. Yeah, what's going on?
I know. Ben and Wes, they're trying to push for the Bitcoin Mag guys to look at Tampa for 25. So I don't know. Maybe we get Bitcoin, the big Bitcoin conference down here or something like that. So
that would be nuts.
I don't know. We could definitely have something. I mean, it's, a big community. I can't say enough about what the job that these guys are doing, like Ben and Wes and Fabio. They're, got built a really strong thing here, and they're going to continue to do it. So, I'm bullish on Tampa. So to say the very least, so if there's any big leaders that are, I'm sure you get a lot of Austinites listening to this, but I moved from Austin to Tampa, so I do.
Tampa's a great place, man. Gosh, I love what you guys are doing up there. That's awesome. Let everybody know where they can find you at. I know Green Candle is the pod. Are you still doing writing or no?
So you've been giving me the push to do writing. So I'm starting to try to get back into it a little bit. So I have like my newsletter, greencandleinvestments.substack.com. But I'm most active on Twitter, Green Candle IT on there. I'm on Nostr as well. which I think is the same handle. If you can search that handle, I think on Nostr. And then, YouTube, Green Candle, and then State of Bitcoin podcast and Macro Insights podcast, wherever you get audio. But if you want to just watch the YouTube, I have them both there as well. But they're both on Fountain too. So if you want to stream me some sats, it'd be greatly appreciated. And thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who are you having on coming up? Because you've had some really heavy hitters on there, right?
Yeah. So I've had I've just been, as I kind of mentioned, I lost my job here. So I've been like just hammering away interviews. So I have a lot kind of
anything you can tease out? Anything you can tease out?
I released as we're recording this here on Tuesday, I released the YouTube of the Peter Dunworth video. But I haven't put the audio out yet. That's going to go on Friday. Mitchell Hodl, I interviewed him. He's at Blockware. Wayfaring Bitcoiner, he's the guy that I started this all with, Green Candle. So I released the audio. The YouTube's going to come out there soon. John from Zapright, I interviewed him too. So that's going to come out here soon. And then I got Odell in the pipeline too. So
what? Oh wow. Wow. You got Stay Humble, Stack Sats, Odell.
Exactly.
Wow.
So man. So I got a lot of big ones coming up. So be on the lookout for all that. And yeah, dude, Car, it's always a pleasure to come on and talk to you, man. I always appreciate it.
Nah, dude, you always keep me up to date with all the macro stuff, and today with all the Bitcoin stuff. I don't pay attention to the price. I mean, we have Clark Moody's dashboard here in the lab, and I'll walk by it, but it's the same price all the time. After a while, I think it's just stuck or something.
Yeah, it's not updating, right?
But you gotta go click refresh. But I appreciate you coming by and just giving us the lowdown on everything. Dude.
Of course, as always, man. I'm at your whim, Car. Whenever you want me on, dude, I'll be on.
Nice.